Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, Everything You Need to Know About Roof and Gutter De-Icing Systems, and probably a bit more. I'm Julia Billen. I'm your host today, and my sidekick here is Anatoly. Anatoly is a valued member of our tech support team. He really is an expert. He's dealing with roof and gutter de-icing problems and solutions on a daily basis. So if you have any questions, this is the guy to ask them to. We got some questions in advance, and we're going to be going through them throughout the presentation. So let's get started. You ready for this?
I'm definitely ready.
All right. So this is the problem. The problem is ice damming. And I didn't really even know this was an issue. I just would look at these shingles, these icicles coming in from the shingles, and I'd be like, oh, that's so pretty. Winter is here. So pretty, but pretty damaging. So talk us through how those beautiful icicles occur.
Yeah, for sure. The icicles, like you said, they are looking nice, but that's just the exterior part of potentially a larger problem that may be happening right on that overhang of your roof. So during your normal winter, you have some snow on the roof, and eventually your heated space give up some heat through the insulation and melt some of that snow during those warmer days. And snow slowly transitioning, that melted mixture transitioning down to your overhang, like we show here on the picture, and then eventually it will hit the section that is not heated, the overhang.
So because there's air flowing under that area.
Air flowing, it's cold from underneath. Yeah, it's pretty much
colder area.
The surface is not warm anymore, it's cold. So all that water will start to refreeze. And that's eventually where your icicles will start to happen. That's when the ice dam will form. And then the largest problem of all here is that the water will start to, will just dam there and will stay in that spot. And eventually, even if your roof is well insulated, it's all nice and new, the water may find a way to start leaking through the ceiling, through the windows, through the walls, and may cause the damages here.
And so even you can't see it happening. So immediately,
Great point.
This could happen over multiple winters, I would assume.
Yeah.
And then at some point, that water finds an entryway. It finds a little crack, and then true damage starts to occur. And I would assume the solution when you see these icicles is not to get up on the roof and to just pull them off.
That's not going to be the best idea. Eventually, you don't want to do that on the normal basis. But eventually, if it gets to the point where there's just a river going through your ceiling or the wall, that may be the only way, because you really need to drain that water. You don't want to just wait and let that water drain through your ceiling.
So let's talk next about how we prevent it. So the real solution is, if you're building a home, or if you are noticing in your existing home that throughout the winters you're starting to see ice form or even icicles, you need to seriously consider investing in a roof and gutter de-icing system. Now, when I think about a roof, and I'm going to use that word first, a de-icing system, I'm expecting to see the complete roof without any snow. So I'm a little surprised by that graphic. So walk me through how these systems work.
Sure. That's a good question. That's a question we're getting a lot from the customers. And yes, the systems, the roof and gutter de-icing systems and applications, they are not designed and they are not made to melt all the snow on your roof. Okay. There's, first of all, typically no reason for it. And for just safe roof and gutter de-icing system, what we're trying to create here is we're trying to create safe melted channels for that water to escape from that overhang portion nicely into the gutter and safely flow through your downspout. And this way your kind of that whole area is damage free, is ice dam free, and it's safe to operate throughout the whole winter.
Excellent. So what I'm seeing here is the red is an indicator that that's the heating cable.
That's the heating cable.
And then the blue is the actual channel where you're trying to get the water to
just
travel.
Kind of natural flow of that water, of that melting ice that will be happening.
Great. And this wire, it comes in two versions, if you will. Constant wattage and self-regulating. And so we'll be talking about those two cable types throughout the presentation, and we'll probably give some nice tips on when one is more appropriate than the other.
For sure.
All right, let's go into it. So we talked about, trying to affect the travel of that water. And so when you're looking at a de-icing system, you have to kind of take some things into consideration to estimate the cable length. Now we do this for you. It's a smart plan that we'll create, but we have to gather some information. Walk me through this chart, Anatoly, and explain to me why this information is so important.
I'll be glad to, because yeah, that's definitely a great part of the design service that we provide. That pretty much our goal is to ensure that we provide the most efficient layout, we provide the most efficient amount of cable to cover the whole system, to cover the whole roof, and still use the minimum amount of cable. Because last thing you want to do is start running the cable back and forth and kind of double up on the cable or do something like this.
So we'll engineer the system for them, and we're collecting this information in the process. And I like that you start with that overhang. I mean, I guess that's got to be the most important part of what we're doing here.
That's for sure, because that's like we just showed on that very first slide.
Yeah.
The overhang is kind of what dictates how much cable we need to use on the overhang, on the zigzag kind of pattern of the wire, how high we need to go. So eventually the width of that overhang, the letter A, is what tells us how much that cable need to travel up and down on that roof in those triangles. So that's definitely a big important number that we need to know. We actually had a question from Karen just about this exact measurement. Karen asked how to prevent ice dams from forming on a roof with a 2-foot soffit or overhang. That's eventually the same measurement that we're trying to use. And yeah, 2-foot soffit would not present a problem for us, because we have a design guidelines that will account for a 2-foot soffit. So eventually, as soon as we know it's a 2-foot, we would specify, use the correct multiplier, add more cable on the zigzag patterns, and cover the overhang in the correct manner.
Excellent. And then the next big thing is those gutters. You really want the heating element traveling in that gutter.
Right. So the gutter length, or the length of the roof, will of course tell us how much cable we want in the gutters itself. It will also tell us what's just the perimeter of the roof, so we know where to add those triangles and how to position and how to run the cable here.
And then after that, we're traveling down that down spot potentially as the third kind of big number that we're looking at. And then we have some optional things that you may find on your roof. You may have a skylight. You may have some type of dormers. Those, you may want to cover. You may not. I guess you could be where are they situated in terms of north, south, east, west location. But those are something that if you really want to be 100% sure you're not going to get any ice buildup, you might want to cover any of those optional things you find on the roof. But the valley, I didn't realize that the valleys are quite important as well. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Valleys are eventually the sections where you would have those two sides of the roof meet. And that's a perfect spot for that maybe drifted snow or some higher snow accumulation to appear just natural, because that's where those two patterns of snow will just start to collect more snow thickness here. So
that would settle in, eventually create ice,
pretty much same problem may appear. So that's why, anytime we're dealing with the valleys, that's a good section, good area to definitely add the cable.
So highly recommended.
Highly recommended for valleys. And like I said previously, for dormers and skylights, if it's existing construction that went through maybe one round of winter and there were no problems, that might just be an optional area. However, if you have that one dormer that is facing specific side, that you're really getting some icing happening there, definitely a good section to just add that additional. And again, the dormer will not much of the cable. You're just probably going to add some 20 feet of cable, which is just going to be a small addition to it.
Yeah. And we do have a quote form, a roof and gutter quote form. You can find it. We've included that link if you just happen to need that in the near term, or just give our experts here a call. And we'll walk you through collecting this information. Let's take a look at a plan. Well, no, we're going to be talking about metal roofs. We did get a question on this, if I remember
The metal
correctly.
roofs is, we had a question from Dan. Do metal roofs present any special issues? And the answer is no, because once again, the cable length can be estimated based on those parameters we just discussed. Plus, we need to know what is the surface, what type of the roof it is. And as soon as we know it's a metal roof, we know it's slightly different pattern layout, just like we show here on the image. And based on that layout, we just use, again, the right formula, the right multiplier to provide the correct size cable specifically for the metal roof.
And you're heating those channels, you're heating along the gutter and that downspout.
Correct.
All right,
correct.
excellent. So metal roofs, absolutely.
Done.
Not a problem. And this is the smart plan that we would send back to you. See, guys, this can be really easy. You just sketch it out if you want. Give us some key dimensions. If we need more, we'll give you a call or email. And then from that, we can design the system for you. So this is one of our smart plans. As you can see, the heating element, we've kind of designed here, the roof and gutter de-icing system. So you see that on the roof, you see that coming down the drain spout, and then we give you some information at the bottom. So let's walk through that. We always identify these plans. It makes it very easy for you to call us, give us the IP number. That anyone who answers the phone can then very quickly pull up that plan and discuss it with you. And then in the next area, we always like to have a date for the project, a name for it. And then, we like to talk about the area. Now, I notice this says roof, and it says zone 3. Are there multiple zones? How does that work?
Yeah, what we usually want to do, once again, just to simplify, make it easier to, to estimate and quote, is to maybe break it down. If it's a larger roof area, just break it down in multiple zones so we can adjust and do any modifications right on each section, because also usually each section of the roof will have its own cable. So like in this example, we have just one side of the roof, one side of the house where we use this 102 feet of cable, and that's what it covers. That zone 2 and zone 1 will have a different amounts, and it's just easier to work with each one in particular.
Okay, so if you're doing full coverage, you might have 4 zones, or you could decide to just cover 1 or 2 zones. Right. And I would assume you would walk the customer through that, or the customer may already know this area is getting the ice damming, the others don't seem to.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Excellent. And then the next box over to the right, we're talking about the actual product that we're using. So we'll tell you whether we're designing it with a self-regulating, which is the case here, or a constant wattage. And then we make those decisions based on, the information that's collected. So our engineers will design that for you. They'll give you the electrical information, which is extremely important for your electrician or for yourself. If this were a constant wattage, it's not as complicated because it's more of just a plug-in product. But with self-regulating, you do need to understand the actual load. And then we will size the breaker for you. And then we'll give you a general idea of the watts that's going to be drawing or amperage as well. On an electrical plan that we also provide. So let's take a look at that. So each plan, it has how it gets designed on the roof, but also it talks about the electrical consumption as well. So this was 102 feet cable. So I see the length right there. It's 120 volts. And then look, tell me about the chart below.
Yeah, so the chart below, we use the chart to properly size the breaker. The way the self-regulating cable works, the main rule for sizing that would be simply size it by the amount of cable you use. So, for example, in our case, we just used 102 feet of cable. That's simple enough. We're just going to go with a 15 amp breaker because it's a smaller area. But again, looking at the chart below, we can see if we would have a larger project that would use closer to a 200-foot cable. Of course, we're going to go with a 30 amp breaker. And once again, the chart is your kind of main guideline for electrician to properly size the breaker based on the amount of cable.
Excellent.
Here's a good thing with why we want to add this chart specifically on this page is because, for example, you're dealing with a self-regulating cable, which is, by the way, you can cut it to length. Anything can be modified right on site. And for some reason, your original amount of cable was 150 feet and you was planning for a 20 amp breaker, but then for some reason you just decided to go shorter coverage. You used only 100 feet of cable. That's where you can electrician can easily take a look on the chart, see what's the final length he used, and put the right breaker for you.
Excellent. And then I also see you're calling out the control on this plan as well. So there's a recommendation that we can make for the control, and that's a back and forth discussion. Sure. Because we like to, and we'll talk about controls in detail, but we like to understand how you want to use it, and from there we'll help you to select the best control.
That's correct.
All right, so we do all that for you. Now let's talk about the nuts and bolts of the heating cable. So we're really going to go in detail about self-regulating versus constant wattage, and when you use one or the other.
Sure.
Now, talk about self-regulating. This is a very special cable. I mean, it's talented, folks. And so talk about why this is so unique.
So the name of the product kind of tells you already some information about it. It's a self-regulating cable, and what we mean by that is it changes the power output based on like how cold or warm each section of the cable is. So probably a good example would be, you may have one large amount of cable transitioning from one side to the other side of the house, and while one side of the house will be in the shade and all snowy and icy, the other side of the house with that same cable will be exposed to the sun and may not even need to be energized as high as the section in the shade. The magic part of that cable is that it will adjust its wattage and heat the shaded portion at a higher watts and run the portion that is on the sun at a lower watts. So literally every foot of cable will respond to those conditions and again self-regulate itself and operate at kind of best efficiency.
All right, and as you mentioned earlier, so it comes between 5 and 10 watts per linear foot. So depending on where it's sitting on the roof,
exactly,
the weather conditions, it's going to fluctuate. And then it's as a result of the conductive core that it has this capability.
It just how the cable is designed based on this conductive core, it reacts to those ambient conditions outside.
Nice. And then as you were talking about earlier, it's sold by the foot. You kind of estimate what you need, and then you can cut that. And of course, we'll be talking about how you do those cuts later in our presentation here. So that's self-regulating. That's like the Mercedes-Benz of the heating cables for roof and gutter de-icing. Now let's talk about the constant wattage. Constant wattage is pretty straightforward, not variable, not self-regulating. It's constant, so it's always at 5 watts per linear foot. So it's not affected by environmental conditions, and it's simply a plug-in. There's no control. And it comes in predetermined lengths.
Full kit, predetermined length, just very basic, easy DIY installation where you just install the cable, plug it in, and it's running at a constant heat output. So a perfect kit for maybe those smaller residential projects where you need smaller amount of cable. It's most likely going to be exposed on just one side of the roof, so you don't really need those self-regulating properties. And maybe you're planning just to control it manually and plug it or unplug it when you need it, so you don't really care about that operation cost. And once again, it's a smaller project.
Right. Excellent point. Now, talk to me. We plugged that in outside. Does that have to be GFCI protected?
It's definitely recommended to be a GFCI protected, so the cable is safe and it has the grounded plug, so fully safe system.
Excellent. Okay, so that's the main difference. And we walk you through which one we would recommend for your particular project. So those are the cables, and then you actually have to get those adhered to the roof. So we've broken this down into self-regulating at the top and then the constant wattage at the bottom. So for self-regulating, we clearly the roof has to be dry. It has to be somewhat warm,
warm
conditions,
outside, right.
Warm conditions outside. And then from there, where do we start? We've got the cable in hand. And
we have the cable.
Ready to go.
As a part of our, I would call it a SmartPlan estimate, we would also, since we know how much cable you use, we know how much cable you use in those triangles versus the downspouts and the gutter, we will do all the estimation for you on how much of these clips you need, because same thing, you don't need to buy bags and bags of these clips and then deal with extra clips or do some sort of return. We're gonna estimate that for you. You will get the right amount of accessories you need specifically for your project. And the actual installation is pretty easy. You use those double-sided tape pads. So those are very good, sticky. They really have a good adhesive. So you just attach those to the back of the aluminum clip, peel the other end of it, attach it to that nice and clean and dry asphalt shingle. Of course, you want to make sure it's warm. You don't want to install it when it's cold outside because the adhesion not going to be as good. So you attach it this way. You usually would use about 5 clips per each kind of zigzag triangle pattern. So you know the cable will stay in the right pattern. It will stay in the right format there. You also see the tape primer on the right.
Yeah, what's that used for?
You would use it for the rubber or EPDM surfaces where you need that extra adhesion.
Okay.
You want to make sure, again, that the double-sided tape pad will do its job right and it will be nice and secured.
So not too bad. So you absolutely are using those aluminum 3-prong roof clips to hold the cable. The double-sided pads, that's what makes it stick to the roof. If you need extra strength, go with that tape primer. And then, so how different is that for constant wattage? It looks like the clip looks different.
The clips and the spacers, these are pretty much your 2 main accessories for the kits. First of all, it's a constant wattage kit, so you want to make sure you space the cable. You don't want to start overlapping the cable over each other. You want to make sure it's spaced, it's not touching each other. So you have with these spacers, you can achieve that safe spacing, so there is no overheating going to be happening. And the actual adhering process, you have those shingle clips that easily slides underneath your asphalt shingle, and you then just simply hook the cable onto that clip, and the installation goes pretty quick and easy.
Excellent. And I see that you've given some guidelines. Clips should be used before and after the downspout. Clearly, you're not getting in that downspout.
Yeah, we didn't mention
kind of running freely through the downspout.
The gutter and downspouts. I mentioned that for the 5 clips per triangle. In the gutter, it's even simpler. You just want to add 1 clip every 10 feet. The cable already lays in the gutter pretty nice and flat, so you just kind of giving that extra secure point every 10 feet to make sure it stays nice and flat there.
Excellent. And we do all that work for you. So we'll calculate how many of each you need, and that will be included in your quote and your shipment. So controls. So here we have we have a lot of variety of controls. Now, most of these controls, all of them, right, are going to be used with the self-regulating because the constant wattage, it's just simply a plug-in. So take me through this it looks like the most complex we save for last. So let's start at the top with the more straightforward controls.
I'm going to try to provide that nice flow from the simplest one to more advanced controllers. Cool. So on the top right, you can see there is just a very basic timer control. You may not see exact details of it, but it's a simple spring-loaded timer that you can spring-loaded dial to up to 12 hours. And what it will just do for you, give you a good manual control. You manually turn it on for amount of hours you need, and the system will just shut off after that amount of hours. So anytime you need specifically to have this manual control, you want to make sure the system only runs when you ask that system to run. That's your perfect scenario. Okay. But once again, that's just the case where you really want to have this manual control where the application requests that.
And this is the only control that does not have a sensor combined with it.
That's correct.
It's just on a timer, and that's it.
That's the only one non-automatic control, I would call it. Everything else we're going to be talking about now would be fully automatic, so you really have a good kind of automation in mind here, and you want to you can ensure your system going to be efficient.
Excellent. So next is the roof and gutter de-icing thermostat. And I even see what looks like a sensor there attached, correct?
Comes with a pre-attached sensor and what the thermostat actually does. And the reason behind it, it's called the thermostat. It's not really your kind of automation control. It's just a thermostat. It only has that one sensor that detects the temperature. So anytime the temperature is below 40 degrees, it turns on the system. The system runs really when it's needed. Anytime it gets warmer, it's above 40, it just shuts the system down.
Okay.
Great I would say great control for the systems where you don't really need that snow control. You don't need to sense the snow. You physically want to run the system only when it's cold out. Good approach, good option for maybe smaller projects because, again, you're still not monitoring the snow. So for the cases when it's a nice cold day, sunny day, but no snow around, that system may still run because it only detects the temperature, while the controls we're going to be talking about next, the premium, economy, and advanced, those controls sense the snow, precipitation,
okay.
and the temperature. And these are your kind of two main factors to turn the system on and off.
Okay, so next we have the economy control.
Right, so economy control, great option, fully automatic control, gives you a lot of different settings to play with, kind of temperature set points. Specifically, if you need to adjust the system, you may want to turn on the system only when it gets like really cold, and you want to set up some limits. Runs based on the temperature sensor and the moisture sensor. So as soon as the temperature is below, let's say 38 degrees, and the sensor, precipitation sensor, senses some snow or ice or even some water, if those two conditions are met, it will turn on the system.
And how many sensors does the economy?
With economy, you can connect up to 2 sensors, so you can always have this, kind of flexibility if you want to monitor maybe 2 sides of the house for most reliable control.
Excellent. And then premium is next?
Premium is next, and the premium is just, I would call it as just like an older brother of advanced control, because these two are very similar controls in terms of monitoring the conditions. They also both run out of the gutter sensor.
So premium and advanced, we're talking about together now.
Yeah, so the premium and advanced, they would run based on that gutter sensor. It would detect, again, the temperature and the precipitation. Anytime the temperature is below 38, precipitation is there, some snow or ice, it's going to turn on the system, activate the system. And to compare those, to kind of differentiate those two controllers, premium would be a perfect control for maybe some larger commercial applications where you want to have multiple sensors, because you may have different sides of that large building getting those different amounts of snow or different melting ratios. So
how many sensors for the premium?
With a premium, you can control up to 6 sensors.
Okay.
So great reliable control for those larger applications, while with advanced, you can control up to 2 sensors.
Okay. Now, is there something that the advanced does a little differently than the premium, or is it really related to the number of sensors?
I would say this basically just the number of sensors. This would be the main kind of tipping point to decide and choose one over the other.
Excellent. All right, that's a great overview. Thank you. Yeah, and here are the sensors. So this is a great chart. No guesswork. We tell you exactly what sensors to use with each control. What is the air temperature sensor doing?
It's just simply a very simple basic sensor. It's only going to detect the air temperature. So good kind of pointer here would be to position that sensor in the right place.
Okay.
Last thing you want to do is maybe position it in like some sunny spot where it's always going to kind of overshoot that temperature and not picked up the right outdoor temperature. So kind of a nice shaded, normal, average section, part of on the exterior of the house would be just a great area.
And is that mounted on the house in some place?
Just on the exterior of the house. Once again, that overhang portion that we were talking before, as long as it's nicely shaded and there's no heat sources around, that would be your great section to just pick the right outdoor temperature.
And the gutter-mounted ice sensors, same thought process there? All right.
Gutter-mounted, meaning, of course, that you want to put it in the gutter.
Right.
Good idea if that's the existing construction that went through maybe that one round of winter, and okay, my north side of the house is really getting more snow or more ice. That would be your best side to put the sensor in, because what you want to have here is you want the sensor to detect those first early conditions of some sort of snow or ice happening in the gutter,
so it can get ahead of it,
and turn on the system right ahead of it, right when it's starting. The last thing you want to have is sensor sitting in the spot that is already partially melted by sun, and it's south side while your north side is already getting snow.
So if you do install the sensors, and let's say you don't realize it, but you've installed it in an area that just doesn't make sense, can you move the sensors after?
For sure.
Okay,
Your
excellent.
sensor can be located for up to 2,000 feet from the control, so you really always have that flexibility. And again, I'm always mentioning the larger commercial application. You may need to have controller in some special mechanical room, while the
Right.
sensor can be, 1,000 feet from that controller and detecting the conditions on the other side of that roof.
Yeah, I see you put there, it can be located up to 2,000 feet from the control panel. So
Correct.
that's good. That's a lot of mileage. Now, anything special? I notice it looks like an aerial sensor on the bottom. Is
We
that
also do show the aerial sensor. That might be a very specific application where you may want to detect just the snow or the snow from the aerial sensor as an addition to the gutter sensor. So
okay?
this way, your system may even be energized really ahead of time as soon as those first snowflakes hit the sensor. So in other
Smart.
words, your gutter may still not be even receiving some snow because the gutter is more shielded, more covered inside of the gutter, while that air sensor will be positioned nice vertically. It will pick up some first snowfall and it will turn the system ahead of time. And you
Excellent.
can always do even a combination of the aerial sensor and the gutter sensor for that best reliable control from two different points.
And then what is
The additional
the
control.
additional
The
control?
additional
Yeah,
control is the remote control override. So
okay.
same thing, you may have that controller in some mechanical room, you have
Mm-hmm.
sensors positioned outside, you may have that remote control sitting in, let's just say, your kitchen or garage where you just want to see if the system is currently running, if there's any fault, or maybe you just want to manually turn
Turn
on
it
the
on,
system.
manually turn it off. Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's
No problem.
great. Now, testing your system. We love to talk about that. One of the things that we should say though is for the constant wattage, it's not much of a test. You can really just plug it in and you can kind of feel that it's warming
The cable
and
will warm up.
it's working.
If it's warming up, it's working. You can always just do a very basic continuity or ohm test on the plug, just like you would do on any other resistive heating appliances.
All right, and not as easy for the self-regulating, but not so difficult. Just using a simple ohm meter, you can test that cable. On the cable, there is a little sticker that has all of the information on it so that you can verify the ohm readings and
You
things of
can
that
do that
nature.
too. Plus, you on with this particular test, what we use is we use the mega ohm meter. That
Hmm.
would be the recommended way to test it, and you would just test the insulation of the cable because what you would do, you would just run the test between the ground and the internal core, the bus wires, and this way you just know the cable is not damaged throughout. It doesn't have any short, and you're good to go with the installation.
Excellent. So always test, guys. All right. Next, this is a great visual. So this kind of pulls it all together. This is, you see the cable right there. You see how it's attached with those clips. I can even see the pad underneath there.
Right.
Totally awesome. So great shot. Any tips here?
Yeah, I think the tips we want to share here, we have already partially covered that we want to use that clip every 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's what will give you a good adherence of that cable, right positioning in the gutter. We actually had Scott asking about very similar question, like
Mm-hmm.
what are routing main cabling lines through the downspout? What are the best tips and techniques?
Right.
So yeah, we every 10 feet put that clip, make sure the cable is secured. You can see here on the picture, we also want to make sure the gutter is nice and clean. We don't want to have these debris or any dry leaves around there. First of all, you don't want to have that sitting next to the cable. It's
Mm-hmm.
combustible. You also want to make sure the gutter is clean just for that proper adhesion of the tape pad. So every 10 feet for the gutter, before and after a downspout, just to keep the cable in the correct section of it. These are really just main points here.
And I think we got a question related to like if you have a screen to cover your gutters, you don't want the leaves and debris to get in.
Right, right.
How do you then use a roof and gutter de-icing
So
system?
good question. Good question
Who
because
asked that question?
we had Ken asking about that. Anytime you have these screens or guards, and specifically talking about the metal screens or guards, you want to have run of the cable in the gutter. That's your main point, of course. You also want to add that additional run of the cable on the top of the card, because what will happen?
So it's like a double system.
Double
then.
system,
in
double
the gutter,
run,
then the
because
mesh, and then above it.
you really want to melt that some sort of channel, some sort of run on the guard, because you want the water flow through the guard. You don't want to have that ice damming occurring again before it even reaches the gutter. So one run in the gutter, one run on the guard. Part of the answer for Ken's question would be that you don't want to install the cable on a combustible surface, such as like a plastic guard. So in a case you have a plastic guard, your best options would be to maybe either remove it for the winter time when you have the cable running there, or just simply replace it with a metal metal guards.
That'd be great. Okay, so that's the gutter. This is the roof. This is that jigsaw kind of triangular pattern. So you're just kind of showing that. And again, the roof is not snow-free.
It's not melted, like we spoke on the very first slide. Yeah. We're not trying to melt the snow from the whole roof. We're trying to prevent that safe channels, the safe routing for any of the icing or water to safely drain through the overhang into the gutter down to the downspout. So during the snowstorms, that's a pretty typical view that you would see. You would just have once again, that sawtooth or zigzag pattern of melted sections on the roof, while the rest of the roof going to be still covered with snow, and that's totally normal.
That's great. Good visual. Let's move on to the next one. So we're still talking about self-regulating here. That requires some connection and some termination. And I would assume at this point you're probably getting an electrician involved. Is that accurate?
Right. Any of these connections needs to be done by a licensed certified electrician. And going slightly back to the main beauty of that cable is cut to length. You can receive maybe, let's just say you ordering without a plan. You don't have the plan yet. You just want to get some of the cable to get that shipped.
So you order
in the meantime,
500 feet.
Order 500. We can do some quick estimation for you just based on the rough information over the phone in just minutes.
Yeah.
Get your order going while the ordering is in UPS truck. We make the nice layout for you, and we figured out you need only 450 feet of cable to use. Cable is cut to length. You can lay that down, cut the section of the cable that you didn't use. That's where that power connection comes into place. One end of the cable, you simply isolate those bus wires and the ground shielding, following the installation manual that we provide for it, because that's where the electrician will actually connect the self-regulating cable that we show here to your power cable, to the power coming in from the breaker. So
you've got to energize that cable.
That's where you energize it, have it all securely in the waterproof junction box, so your cable now have power. The other end of it, once again, you have a little bit too much of the cable. You trim 50 feet of it. You make your end termination step by step. Once again, we provide a full manual for it, and that's where you, like we show here on the pictures 1, 2, and 3. Picture 1, we just we cut a little bit of the cable at the end.
This is the termination part of it.
This is the termination of the end cable.
So we've brought power, we've connected it to the self-regulating cable, and then we've got to, on the other end, we've got to terminate it.
We terminate it to the length we need. We trim the cable. We add that smaller heat shrink cap to it. Then add the braid sleeving just to fully cover the cable, and the final larger size heat shrink on the end. Apply it on one end. Make sure it's all sealed. You can see the glue coming out on each side. You know it's full waterproof. It's fully secure. You're ready to go.
I assume you're testing again after this.
You still can test it. You pretty much, when we were talking about testing, we forgot to mention that you really want to test it at kind of every major part of your installation. You definitely want to test it when you just receive it. Just making sure it was not damaged in transit. Do some sort of dry layout, some section of the roof done. Test it again. You completed the layout, test it again. Maybe you worked with those aluminum 3-prong clips.
Make sure you test it again because
you don't want to maybe cut it with some sharp edge or so. As soon as it's all secured and done, you can do your final test before and after your termination, and you're ready to go.
Test.
Triple test for sure.
All right.
And what I wanted to just add real quick here, 50 feet of cable that you trimmed out, you still can use that cable on maybe some other smaller section, or anywhere you need to use the self-regulating cable. It's not a waste. You still can use it and add it to some upgrade to some larger project or smaller project you're going to be doing later. So once again, a very easy, very flexible product to work with.
Nice. All right. And not so expensive. So we wanted to show you the pricing for that. We have the kits. Those are the constant wattage, prefix sizes. You can see the cable box. Inside that box, you're going to get the cable with the plug, and then the products to actually attach. And all of that's included. And
all full kit. You have everything ready to go. It's just size the right amount of cable, or of course, we can size it for you.
Absolutely. And then the self-regulating, I definitely think, that's when you want to get us involved even more. And we can help you figure out exactly that cable length and the number of clips, pads, and if you need that primer or not. So as you can see, very affordable, and we do all the work for you. So every project has a quote that will come with it.
And this slide might not be the best slide to mention Christopher's question, but Christopher asked us, any commercial application? I have a client with about 104 feet of the metal roof, and we're looking to do this. There is absolutely no problem. That's where you're most likely going to go into the self-regulating cable, because 100 feet of the metal roof, that's just the roof length. You may need to use another 300 feet on the actual zigzag pattern, because that's your critical point. So you may end up in about 400 feet of the actual cable length for that amount of roof. And that's definitely not a problem with a self-regulating cable. You can do it all in one section of the cable. Can be pretty easy setup. And once again, we can easily design this either in one large section or divide it into zones for you.
Work with Anatoly. All right. So any questions, guys? I mean, that was a ton of information. Thank you. Very informative. I've learned a lot today. I hope you guys did. We're going to be sending this recording out to y'all. So if you do have questions, you can always get back to us. Let's take a look at the next slide.
We actually have one more question from Chip that I believe we didn't cover. Chip was asking if he heard about fire concerns with the other product. Can you address this? We didn't have any fire concerns with our product, but what I can mention is, first of all, installer, anytime installer is doing this application, need to make sure the roof and gutter and downspouts are free of debris. We already mentioned that. We want to make sure it's all kind of free of any combustible materials or anything laying around there. And heating cables should never be installed on the combustible surface itself. So like if you have wood shingles, that would not be the best combination. That's not the surface you want to lay the heating cable on it. And also the heating cable should not be embedded in any insulation material and like in or under the roofing. In other words, we're not trying to heat your roof here. We're trying to provide those channels itself. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent question. All right. So what's coming up next? We're here every month. Our next webinar is going to be related to electric floor heating. It's summertime. It's getting warm out there. So there's a lot of trade that are starting to do those new constructions and remodels. And we want to give them some tricks of the trade on electric radiant heating for tile floors. So join us. We're always here the second Thursday of every month, June 14th. I'm going to miss that one. Bummer. But please join. Scott will be back, and he's great. Not as good as you, Anatoly, but we always have a monthly promotion going on. We like to combine the webinars with the actual products that you may be interested in. 20% off. What's interesting about this promotion, we don't normally discount controls. And this promotion we've given 20% off the heating element and the controls itself. So if you can take advantage of it, please do. And then other than that, give us your feedback. I love doing these things, and I want to do things that you care about or questions that you get asked a lot about. You challenge me to do one of these webinars and on a particular subject, and I will make it happen. So give us your feedback. And then give us a call, email me directly. I'm starting to get a lot of emails from you guys, and I really love that. jbillen@warmlyyours.com. Like us on Facebook. There's a lot of great material there. And that's kind of it. So
yeah, we covered it.
Did you have a good time?
For sure.
Cool. All right. Well, until next time,
stay warm
and be radiant. Take care, guys.
Bye.